Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Shada la ilaha illallah, Shada la ilaha illallah, Shadana Muhammad Rasulullah, Shadana Muhammad Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala falah, Hayya ala falah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah na'maduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. May yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa may yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, we are about to enter the blessed month of Ramadan. We are all eagerly waiting to enter the blessed month of Ramadan, and we are also preparing ourselves for the month of Ramadan. Since we are approaching the time of Ramadan, it will be good for us to know some of the specific rules of Ramadan that we need to follow during the entire month of Ramadan. It's mentioned in Quran chapter number 2, verse number 183. Believers, fasting has been made mandatory for you as it was made mandatory for the people before you. So fasting is a worship which is mandatory for all. But we still know there are some exceptions. That is also mentioned in Quran. It's mentioned in chapter number 2, verse number 185. Those who are sick or on a journey have to fast the same number of days at another time. So from this we can understand fasting is mandatory, but there are some exceptions. Some exceptions are temporary, some are permanent. So two of the temporary exceptions are when somebody is ill or sick, they're not feeling well, they can compensate for the day that they did not fast during Ramadan in some other month. Similarly, during travel for few days or so, they need not fast during that period, but they have to compensate in a different month for the days for which they have not fasted. In chapter number 2, verse number 184, it is mentioned those who want, you can fast or you can feed the poor. So this was the ruling. But in chapter number 2, verse number 185, it says, if you're not fasting, you have to compensate on another day. So if we look at the hadith number Sahih Bukhari 4507, we'll know what is the difference. So it's mentioned narrated by Salama, when the divine revelation for those who can fast, they had a choice, either fast or feed a poor for every day. That was revealed initially. So it was permissible for one to give a ransom and give up fasting till the next verse. So from this we clearly understand earlier the ruling was you can fast, or if you can feed a poor, that will act as a compensation. So you can do either one. But this ruling got changed, whereby if you can fast, you are supposed to fast. If you are leaving for some reason, then you have to compensate on another day. That is the final ruling we have. And the other reason we need not fast or temporary exception is women having menstrual cycle or during their periods, they can compensate it on some other day, some other month for the days that they did not fast. So this is mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari 1951 and 304. Also there is another misconception in this. People think they can do it 5 or 10 days or a week, specific period when they need not fast during the menstrual cycle. But that's not the case. There isn't any period defined. So based on each of them, whatever is their normal cycle, they have to make sure they don't fast for that. Once it is complete, they immediately need to start fasting. And the other exemption is pregnant women and women who have newborn babies, they may need to feed them. For them also they have exception. We understand it's mentioned in chapter number 2, verse number 286, La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha. Allah will not burden a person beyond his ability. So if somebody is able to fast even during that time, yeah, they can fast. But if there is doctor's advice or they feel it's not good for their health or it will harm their child, then they can also take exemption, but they need to compensate it during a different month. So we have till now seen the exceptions that are temporary, where they need to fast. But there are also conditions or criteria which will apply for people who cannot fast permanently. Some very old people, They are not able to fast during Ramadan, and they will not even be able to compensate it during some other month. So they are also exempt from fasting permanently. The other case will be the people who have diseases which will make them like they would not be able to fast anytime even in the future. Like somebody has diabetics or so, they need to take the food on time. So they would not be able to fast in Ramadan, and they would not be able to fast even later as well. As we saw in the earlier ruling in chapter number 2, verse number 184 and 185, where it got changed. So we have to understand there is no compensation for fasting other than compensating on a different day. So those who can't fast, who are relieved from fasting permanently, they do not, since it is not mandatory for them, they need not compensate in the future. They do not even need to feed poor. That is the rule that we can derive from those two. And we saw like for temporary fasting, they need to fast during a different time. Do we know like when we have to fast? Is there anything that is mentioned in Quran or Hadith? Actually, there isn't anything specifically mentioned like they have to compensate within a specific period. But we ourselves need to understand like nobody knows like how long they are going to live. Like anybody can get mouth at any time. So it is better for us if we have got some pending fastings to do it as soon as possible. But there is an hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari 1950 which says like Aisha radiallahu used to fast during the month of Shaban, like next after completing it, the remaining fasting Aisha radiallahu used to do it in Shaban, because Aisha radiallahu used to serve, like used to be very busy with serving Prophet. So this is the only hadith we can see, but still we can understand like we should try to fast as soon as possible for the pending days. And coming to like when does the fasting starts? There are so many misconceptions, there is so many wrong assumptions, and because of this we tend to make mistakes in our fasting. We need to understand when does the fasting starts and what are all the rules related to it. Inshallah, we'll go over it today. So it's mentioned in chapter number 2, verse number 187. Eat and drink until the white thread appears to you distinct from the black thread. So this is clearly further explained by Prophet Muhammad in Sahih al-Bukhari 1916, where Prophet Muhammad says that verse means the darkness of the night and whiteness of the dawn. So fasting starts immediately at the time of Fajr. So till the time of Fajr, you can eat and drink whatever you want. The time has not started. But we know like back in India as well as some other places, they follow like they print a card in which they'll mention like the fasting, the Subuh prayer might be 4:50 and they'll mention like 4:45 or 4:42. There isn't any rule or anything mentioned in Quran and Hadith to have a specific time before even Fajr, because it's clearly mentioned in Quran as well as further explained in Hadith. It starts exactly at the time of Fajr. So you can eat till that moment. Your Sahar time is there till that moment. So these rules we should not even be following, because this is not mentioned by Allah or Rasul. Also, we'll hear people saying like I kept niyat maybe half an hour before. After that, I'll not be able to eat. Inshallah, we'll discuss about niyat later in our khutbah. But considering that even if the niyat doesn't stop, it doesn't mean like you advance your fasting. Fasting doesn't start. We have to understand fasting doesn't start until the time of Fajr. So you can eat till that point. And another one we need to keep in mind is we should try to delay the sahur. So we can see like in Sahih al-Bukhari 1921, narrated by Anas, Zayd bin Thabit said, "We took the suhar with the Prophet. Then he stood for the prayer. I asked, what was the interval between suhar and adhan? He replied, the interval was sufficient to recite 50 verses of the Quran." So from this we can understand like Prophet Muhammad way was like he used to take sahar closer to the time of Fajr. So we should try to delay it. We know how we have standard practice whereby people get up even very early, 1 hour or 2 hours earlier, and they do the sahar. So based on this, we can find like it's better to delay the sahar. And also for the time of sahar and Fajr, there is an hadith like Prophet Muhammad used to have a way whereby there used to be 2 adhan. So it's mentioned in Sahih Muslim 1092. Abdullah bin Umar reported, I heard the Messenger of Allah saying, Bilal announces the adhan during the night, so you eat and drink. So people can eat and drink when Bilal announces the adhan, like sahar is still there. Then when they hear the adhan, till you hear the adhan of Ibn Maktum, so which will signify or which will mean like the time of Fajr has come and they are supposed to stop eating. So this is a practice that Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had during his period. From this we can clearly understand the Sahar time was delayed and till Fajr you can have food. And other one which people might not be aware, they make mistake, is some of them might sleep in the night and they would wake up late time than Fajr, and they think like they need to have something like a water or a date or something so that they can start the fasting. But that is also wrong. We understand from these hadith like during the time of Fajr the fasting has started, so you're not supposed to have anything. If you wake up late, then you have to continue your fasting and do not have any food. These rules, like some of us are not aware, we think like we can have food, we are supposed to have food before fasting, but that's not the case based on the hadith and Quran ayat that we have seen till now. Okay, we have seen the start time of fasting. What is the end time? So it's mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari 1954, narrated Umar bin al-Khattab, Allah's messenger said, when night falls from the side and the day vanishes from this side and the sun sets, then the fasting person should break his fast. From this we understand like we are supposed to break the fast immediately after sunset. Here again we see like the card that I talked about earlier, they'll have the time of breaking the fast, like Maghrib or the sunset time would be like 6:30, they'll have it like 6:35. So you cannot delay your fasting. To say in fact there is another hadith which condemns or contradicts in a way, saying like you have to hasten your fast, you have to be fast in breaking it. So it's mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari 1957, where Allah's messenger said, the people will remain in the right path as long as they hasten the breaking of the fast. So from this we clearly understand we cannot delay the fast. We should be ready for the moment the sun sets and we immediately need to break the fast. Allah likes like weakness. We have to show our weakness. We should not be like, yeah, I can fast for another 5-10 minutes. No. I'm fasting only for the sake of Allah. So when he said like the sun sets, you are supposed to break the fast, you have to break it immediately. This is what is also stressed in this hadith. And we have seen people, common misconceptions saying like don't eat too much food during the period of Ramadan. Like Ramadan is, you have to control food. There isn't anything mentioned like that. That is completely wrong. The purpose of fasting, Allah has clearly mentioned in chapter number 2, verse number 183. When he mentions about fasting, he said it is for taqwa. It's to get the fear of Allah. Let's discuss about niyat. What does niyat mean? Because we know like we normally have a standard practice in India at least, whereby they'll say like nawaitu sawmagadin. That's the way they'll start reciting to start the fasting. But there isn't any Quran or hadith supporting it. So what does niyat mean? Niyat means intention, what we have it in our heart. Sahih al-Bukhari hadith number 1, Innamal a'mal bin niyat. Allah's messenger is saying the reward of deeds depends upon the intentions and every person will get the reward according to what he has intended. So niyat means whatever we think in our heart. So for prayer, if you are doing ablution and then wudu and we are about to pray, our niyat is like we did ablution and we are about to pray for it. That's our niyat. We have thought in our heart that we are going to pray. Similarly for fasting, all the actions we do, we get up during the time of Sahar and all those, we make a thought in our heart saying like I'm about to fast. So that is what is niyat. You need not utter it using any words. And we have to understand another one as well, like when we break our fast, normally like everybody would be hungry and our food would be ready and others, and also the Maghrib prayer might start. Then we have to understand like it is better for us to finish having our food and then join the prayer. This we can get from Sahih Muslim 560, where it is mentioned like there is no praying when a meal is presented or nor when one needs to relieve himself. So when the food is available and ready, it's better you finish it and then you can join the prayer and you can start praying. Because it's clear like we will not be able to concentrate much on the prayer. When food is ready, just finish it, then you can come and start your prayer. And we have seen the rules start and end, but what does fasting mean? What is it like? What are all the things that should be referent during the time of fasting? We know like we cannot eat and drink. The other one that we should not be doing during the time of fasting is having sexual intercourse with wife. So it's mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari 1904, if one of you is fasting, he should avoid sexual relationship with his wife. Also, there are other etiquettes that we need to follow during the time of fasting. So we should not talk bad words, or we should stay away from evil actions. This is mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari 1903, where narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Whoever does not give up forged speech and evil actions, Allah is not in need of his leaving his food and drink." So it acts as a stern warning. So we should make sure during the time of fasting, when we are referring ourselves some others, also there should be change in our action. We should not speak bad, or we should stay away from evil actions. That is what is being stressed in this hadith as well. Also during the time of fasting, if somebody comes to fight or quarrel with you, you are supposed to say, "I am fasting." This is mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari 1904. And the other common, we will not say like mistake, something happens is like when we fast, we forget that we are fasting, and we might have water or food, something during that time. So what is the ruling for it? Will it spoil our fasting? No, it doesn't spoil. If you forgetfully have it, still you can continue to fast. And also you need to understand like that food is provided by Allah to you. This is mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari 6669. So we have seen like we have to fast, and some of the rules of fasting, start time and end time. What about if somebody breaks the fast on purpose? When we saw the previous rules, like which are all the ones that will cause the fasting to break. If somebody breaks, they eats, or they do something that should not be done during the time of fasting, the punishment is, we can see it from Sahih al-Bukhari 1936, where it's being narrated by Abu Huraira. When people were sitting with Prophet, one person came to Prophet and said, "Allah's messenger, he said like I had sexual intercourse with my wife while I was fasting." Then Allah's messenger asked like, "Do you have the ability? Can you relieve a slave?" Then the person replies, "No, I can't." Then he says like, "Do you have the ability, or can you fast for 2 continuous months?" Then the same person says like, "No, I cannot." He replies negative. Then Rasulullah asks, "Can you serve food for 60 people?" Then he says no. On this, like Prophet ﷺ gets like a basket full of dates, and he gives it to the person and says like, "You donate it in the name of charity." Then the person says, "Should I donate it to poor? If that is the case, I am the most poor person in this place." So then Prophet ﷺ laughs a lot, and then he says, "Okay, spend it or have it for your family." So this hadith also says us the rule, if somebody breaks the fast, what they have to do. So we can understand like they should relieve a slave if they can. Second is they have to fast for continuous for 2 months, or they have to feed 60 people for the sin they have committed, like they broke the fast on purpose. And the other thing, common misconception is, as we mentioned, like the sexual intercourse with the wife would break, but that is only during the time of fasting. We need to understand during other times there isn't any restrictions. Also, the compulsory bath is only for prayer, and it is not for fasting. We can see it from Sahih al-Bukhari 1931 and 1932, narrated Abu Bakr bin Abdurrahman. My father and I went to Aisha al-Islam, and she said, "I testify that Allah's messenger at times used to get up in the morning in a state of janaba from sexual intercourse, not from a wet dream, and then he would fast that day." Then he went to Salama, and she also narrated a similar thing. And in Quran chapter number 4 verse number 43, it would be mentioned like, "Oh, you believe, do not approach prayer while you are intoxicated until you know what you are saying, or in state of janaba, except those passing through until you are washed." So from this we can clearly understand the restriction is only for prayer and not for fasting. And there are other general misconceptions like during fasting you are not supposed to have the scent or perfume. You should not take bath during the time of fasting because the water can enter through your ears. These are all wrong assumptions. Prophet Muhammad himself has taken bath during fasting. We can see in Sunan Abu Dawud 2365, narrated by Abu Bakr, a man who narrated his tradition to me said, "I have seen the messenger of Allah in Al-Arj pouring water over his head while he was fasting, either because of thirst or because of heat." When Prophet Muhammad has done, there is nothing stopping us also from doing it. Also, we would have heard like we should not be brushing or we should not use paste during brush. There isn't any restrictions on that. So only those we saw earlier, only those should be avoided during fasting. There is no other restrictions like this. Also, the other common misconception is we would have seen like people going and spitting often They would think like if you swallow the saliva, your fast will be broken. That is again a wrong assumption. There isn't anything like that. This is a common phenomenon whereby it happens automatically. This does not break your fast, so you need not go and spit frequently. And we also need to understand like what are all the days that we are not supposed to fast. So we have not fasted because of journey or somebody is sick, so they have to compensate on another day. So we also need to know what are all the days that we cannot fast. So we cannot fast on the Eid, like Eid al-Fitr, as well as on Eid al-Adha, also on the 3 following days after Eid al-Adha. So we can see this from Sahih al-Bukhari 1991, narrated Abu Sa'id. The Prophet Muhammad forbade the fasting of Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. And for the 3 days after Eid al-Adha, it's mentioned in Sahih al-Muslim 1141. Nubaysha al-Hudali reported Allah's Messenger is saying, the days of Tashriq are the days of eating and drinking. The Tashriq means the 3 days following Eid al-Adha. So from this we can understand like these days we should not be fasting. We'll see more about it in our second khutbah. Wa'udhan alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. So in the first sermon we have seen like various rules that we need to know during fasting, and we need to follow that. And the most important thing for us to know is when do we know like the fasting starts. There is a lot of confusion among this. Like how do we know like what is the day the fasting starts? For this again we need to go back to Quran and Sunnah. What is mentioned in Hadith? In Sahih al-Bukhari 1909 it is mentioned, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, start fasting on seeing the crescent and give up fasting on seeing the crescent. And if the sky is overcast, you can or you cannot see it, complete 30 days of Shawban. Meaning like we have to start our fast as well as end our fast based on the sighting of the moon. We have more confusion here saying like how do we understand like they do different calculation others. That will be a very big discussion, but in short from this hadith we can understand like we have to start our fast or end our fast based on the sighting of the moon, based on the hadith that is mentioned Sahih al-Bukhari 1909. And also as a continuation to it, like we complete inshallah our month of fasting on the month of Ramadan, and after that during the month of Shawwal we have to fast like it's not mandatory, but it is advised, or it will get more deed for us if we fast for 6 days. And so 6 days need not be continuously after our fasting, like after our Eid. It can be any 6 days during the month of Shawwal. So it's mentioned in Sunan Abu Majah, books number 7, hadith 78. Whoever fasts 6 days, Allah's Messenger is saying, whoever fasts 6 days after the Fitr will have completed the year. For whoever does a good deed will have the reward of 10 like it. From that we can understand like if you are able to fast for 29 or 30 days of Ramadan and we follow it up with 6 days in Shawwal, it will be considered as if you have fasted an entire year. That is the deed that will be given by Allah. So all this we have seen like many rulings and others. Also we should encourage our small or young kids to have them like or train them in fasting. We should not stress or overpower them or force them, but it will be good for them to start fasting even if they are going to do for a couple of hours or so. Let us make sure like whatever the rules we have seen regarding fasting, by the grace of God we are able to follow, and let Allah shower His blessings and make us among those who follow all the rules of fasting and approach fasting and approach the Ramadan with good intention and try to get as many deeds as possible. Wa'udhan alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.